God, sounds like somebody who is PMSing would say.
Yeah. I'm not sure why. Like, I never have asked her about it again, and I probably should because I'm curious. Like, I have a lot of questions. But I just believed it. And
But also, that logic is really shaky. Like, oh, it doesn't exist because it didn't happen to me. I mean, a lot of like, when I'm talking about colonization and racism and human rights and stuff, it's that exact like thought process that like makes me have to do this job anyway. Like to begin with is like, oh well, none of that happens to me, so it doesn't exist.
yeah, so it's not real.
It's
Absolutely.
it's definitely like a smaller like way of thought, like that is clearly being taught somewhere, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I understand it to a certain degree. It's hard to understand what someone else is going through if you have not gone through it, like in a deep way, but denying other people's life experiences is fucked up. And I have a feeling that my mom saying that may have had less to do with her personal experience and the way that she was raised. My grandmother was a very stern woman who was a career nurse. And while on the one hand, she was very, well versed in medical science, on the other hand, medical science when she went to nursing school in the 40s was deeply, deeply misogynistic, like makes us look positively like miles ahead of that at this point. She was very, very against the idea of like folk medicine and like believing what people told you. Like she was very by the book. And if the book didn't say that PMS was real, then she didn't believe in it, even if she experienced it. So I have a feeling that it came from my grandmother and then my mother repeated it to me. And then I went about my life believing that PMS wasn't real until it was probably at least my late 20s. And I was working an office job. And I, like, one day it just occurred to me, like, I noticed that I was in an extremely bad mood. And there was no reason for it. Nothing had happened. I just fucking hated everything. And then the next day I got my period. And I was like, wait a second, hang on. So the next month, when I knew that it was coming up, I started paying attention. And over the course of about 6 months, I tracked it. And it was completely undeniable that I had a period of grumpiness and aches and pains and just like wanting to eat everything and also kill everybody for 3 or 4 days before I got my period. And I was like, okay, well, this is empirical evidence that PMS exists and that I have it. And it's kind of amazing to me that I was able to live as a person who got a period for probably 15 years before I put this together on my own. And it made me like, first of all, it made me realize like how much we can deny our own realities when we're told that they're not valid. Which is probably something we could do like several episodes on by itself. But it also made me like, I was upset because I want to just be able to categorically reject anything that anyone, especially someone who doesn't get periods, has to say about how people are irrational or hysterical, when they're on their period. Like I still remember in the 2016 election cycle when people said that we could never have a woman president because when she was on her period, she would have the nuclear codes and how dangerous that would be and how pissed off that made me. But at the same time, I cannot deny, and the science concludes, that the hormonal changes that happen over the menstrual cycle are real, and they do affect the way that you behave. Like, even if you're aware of the fact that, okay, my hormones are in flux right now, and I'm more likely to be, angry about things.
That, and not everybody feels those same things, and I think that's a huge problem when it comes to it, is that we're told what the symptoms of PMS are perceived to be over and over again throughout our entire lives, and it's always in a negative context. But we are very rarely taught in school exactly what PMS is, what the symptoms can be for it, and that it's okay and that it happens, you know? And so it's really hard to like say that I do or don't have PMS because it manifests so differently in every single person that
That's
has it.
very, very true. Yeah. Yeah, and everyone's experience is so different. I think I hate to give any fuel to the logic that, like that people who get periods aren't to be trusted because they can't control their emotions. Like I hate that idea. But I also hate the idea that in order to combat that, I might have to pretend that I don't have changes in mood over the course of my menstrual cycle.
As I was saying, like when you teach this at a younger age, that it's a thing, it exists, that it's not negative, that it's totally normal, people are more likely to accept it as they get older if it's a responsibility that period havers have is to be like, okay, I have to work, and even though I hate everyone today, I'm going to have to be professional.
Right.
And that doesn't mean hide the fact that you're, on your period. It just means that you're going to have to, like, suck it up, just like you have to suck up those cramps and stuff to go to work sometimes. But also, like, say we had more women bosses, for instance. But say more people were, like, higher ups were aware of that and, like, supplied, like, pads and tampons in the women's bathrooms for free. And, like, acknowledged that women's entire, like, bodies are changing on a constant basis throughout the entire month, and to be, like, okay with that,
Right.
then more accepting of it, like, then, things would be a little bit different, and we wouldn't have to hide the fact. I do have mood swings some months. Some months I wake up feeling like I'm hungover every morning.
Mm-hmm. You make a really good point. Like, because as menstruators, we are, generally considered to be like the minority in working situations. We are considered to be like the weirdos on the outside. And so therefore we have to conform to the working world and the way that the world is so that we can, like, get by, even though we have periods. But what could happen is that we could acknowledge that about half of the population of working people generally is going to have a period sometime and make some concessions for them. Like, yeah, make sanitary and menstrual products available. Maybe make it, like, not totally unacceptable to take a nap if you need to, maybe, and I'm going out on a limb here, but, just supply chocolate, just keep it around. Because, again, I know I'm falling into a stereotype, but okay, chocolate does release endorphins into the blood. Like, that is a true fact, and it makes me feel better. And one of the things that I noticed when I started having this realization about my moods and PMS and my cycle was that, like, if I start thinking uncontrollably about chocolate cake, that means that my period is coming. And not because I was, like, raised where, like, in fantasy land, like, I got chocolate cake every time I had my period. That did not happen. It just organically happens to me that every month I start thinking about chocolate cake, and I know that I need to go to the bathroom and get a pad or a tampon when that happens because I know what it means. So I'm just saying, employers, if you have a break room, consider keeping chocolate on hand, because if you make concessions to the fact that people in your workforce have periods and make it easier for them to just live their authentic lives, then they don't have to feel so much shame about it. And maybe the shame and the fact that we're expected to just suck it up all the time is what makes us so fucking cranky when we get cranky.
Yeah, I mean, when we start to eliminate the shame and start to accept people for who they are, then I have to say mine is not chocolate, mine is salt. I want potato chips so bad when I'm
Oh
on
yeah.
my period, but not necessarily chocolate. I just
Hmm.
mainly because chocolate is like a regular thing for me. I get like a chocolate every single night after dinner. I get two chocolates, and it's just like it's not something I crave. It's just something that I have to like settle me down. I know it's time to like relax, but um if when we start like accepting people and we stop like upholding these rules and superstitions and myths and taboos, you have
Right. Yeah,
more
like
productive employees. If we're looking at this from a capitalist standpoint,
yeah, but like if we're making a world where it's just easier to have a period instead of making it more difficult for people who have periods to get by in the world, then like just everybody benefits.
yeah. So what that a world where periods are taken seriously is a world where reproductive rights are taken more seriously.
Oh God.
It's a
Yeah.
world where girls can go to school
Hmm.
um, and learn better.
Yeah.
It's a place where more women can be in the workplace without feeling shameful once a month. It's a
Right.
place where, um, you know, it's a place where I don't know where I'm going with that. I lost it, but
It's a better place.
but ultimately, what it comes down to is it's not even an option anymore. It's what has to happen.
Right. Yeah, for real. I mean, like,
The I can sell it all I want all night long, but what it comes down to is that the way that we've been going about this for hundreds of years clearly is not doing anybody any good in terms of physical health, in terms of mental health. It puts actual period havers' lives in danger,
hmm
and so we need to fix it,
yeah.
and
So
that's
how
what
do
it comes down to.
so I guess our prescription is like talk about periods more. I think really
And at a
like
younger age, talk about
mhm.
periods more, and at a younger age, let's make blood not blue in period
Yeah.
commercials.
Right?
Let's or let's acknowledge that everyone bleeds, but blood isn't anything that's unnatural or unclean. It's something that is totally natural and
Yeah.
um, you know can and should be managed and accepted as a whole.
Yeah, like and let's acknowledge that people who have periods are like so metal because of because I mean like we said before, like dealing with blood on the regular, not even flinching about it, very often dealing with monstrous amount of pain. And a lot of the time there's like, psychological like implications to having a period, like just being like so exhausted that it is
Oh
so
yeah.
hard to do anything, or being, like I get angry. I get angry much more easily around the time that I have my period. And like the fact that folks who have symptoms like these are like powering through their lives, like that's metal as fuck. And I think that that deserves a lot of respect that frankly we're not getting right now.
Right. And I mean, it's rough. The other day, one of my kids skipped like the first two classes that they
Mhm.
were supposed to be in, and I asked them why, and they said, "Well, I was tired. I had my period."
Mhm.
And I had to explain that in a perfect world that would be perfectly
Yeah.
acceptable, but it's not in the world that we live in today. And as a woman of color living in a very white neighborhood where my kids go to a very white school system, I'm the person who, when my kid misses school, is
Mm,
flagged as somebody to call social services on.
fuck.
I could lose my kid because they skipped some classes because they had their period.
Jesus Christ. Yeah.
And that's the reality of it.
Normalizing periods won't fix all of that, but it's a big step.
Yeah. Definitely.
Because if we're like, systemically normalizing the having of periods as like a real issue that needs to be addressed, that also probably means that we're normalizing a lot of other things that are really important for us to look at culturally. So, you know, it's a step on the path.